Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hello. Welcome back to the Natural Super Kids podcast. So happy to have you listening in today. I hope you're having a good day. Today's episode is a bit different to our regular episodes, not so information heavy, or really like based on, naturopathic health for kids like we usually speak about, although it really ties into, health, particularly mental health. And I want to share, so I guess it's more of a personal episode. I want to share some of the personal insights that I've brought home from our recent travel adventure to Fiji, really talking about values, priorities, what matters most. So I think it's relevant for all of our listeners with children, which I'm pretty sure is all of our listeners, most of our listeners, or, even just for that personal growth as well. And I think this is why I love travel so much. If you have been a listener or in my world for any length of time, you may already know that. Whenever we go on travel adventures, I often talk about it on our socials or on the podcast. I know last year when we went to Canada, I did an episode all about sort of traveling with teens. So there's always these, I guess, personal growth that comes. And that's what I love about travel, because I come home a different person, no matter what that adventure is. And I love longer travel adventures, but in the stage of life we're at the moment, I'm having to accept that my son's doing an apprenticeship, my daughter's in year 10, even going into year 11 and 12 next year. We are not going to be able to take time out in the school term. We nearly always, when we travel, take time out in the school time because, one, it's so much cheaper, so much more expensive to go on the school holidays. Two, because we have the freedom, my husband and I, to be able to take time off whenever. And three, because it's not so busy everywhere. School holidays, just equals a lot of busyness. And I appreciate that lots of families do need to go in the school holidays, but I don't have a problem taking my kids out of school for a few weeks. I mean, we took them out of school for a whole year when they were younger to travel around Australia. So I know every family feels a bit different about that. But I guess my point is my daughter going into year 11 and 12, my son having an apprenticeship, we can't take those longer sort of times off. So this one was quite short, 10 days, a bit too short for my liking, but it was a really relaxing holiday. So it felt very nice and spacious and relaxing. So I always get this sort of feeling of personal growth in different ways when I come back from a trip. And the other thing that I really love about travel is that it just broadens your perspective, doesn't it? Like, it makes you realize how insignificant most of your everyday worries and stresses are in the scheme of the whole world. And especially when you travel overseas, I just love that you can be in a completely new environment, new culture, within a few hours. I mean, for us here from South Australia to Fiji, it was like a 5-hour flight. Such a short amount of time to be in a whole new environment. And that exposure to different cultures, different environments, different challenges that you are inevitably faced with when you travel, I think, it sparks creativity. It really, I guess, supports that adaptability. So I just think personal growth wise, I think travel is just such a great thing. And those life lessons that you get from travel. And when it comes to family travel, of course, there are definitely some challenges teenagers or younger children, whatever it might be. There's different challenges at different stages. There's the challenge of all being together for such a long period of time, not having that, school or work to kind of give you a break from each other. But there's so much goodness in that dedicated time together as well. So I just wanted to share in this episode some of the personal insights that I had, and hope that you can carry some of those with you, or there's something in there for you as well. I've always prioritized travel. I didn't travel a lot as a child. Like, I didn't get a lot of travel opportunities as a child. My first overseas adventure was on my own, with my boyfriend at the time, who now is my husband, and we went to work on a camp in the States and didn't come home for almost 5 years from that trip. But I didn't travel as a child, but that world travel, backpacking, working overseas really planted a love for travel in me. And ever since then, I've really prioritized travel. And I often get comments from friends saying, how are you affording another trip? And the answer to that is we prioritize spending money on travel, which can be a little bit of a friction point between my husband and I, if I'm honest. Like, I love spending money on travel. He's a bit like, oh, haven't we spent enough on travel? Maybe we could, spend some money on some other things. But he's always up for a travel adventure as well. I drive an older car. We limit money on eating out and buying coffees and all those little things that add up. I don't get my nails done. I don't get my eyelashes done. I don't get my tanning done. I don't spend a lot on beauty or a huge amount on clothes. And we put money away every single week for our next travel adventure. We I guess limit spending in other areas so that we can prioritize travel. All families have those things they prioritize, right? And everyone has different choices there. But that's how we afford to travel. And it's not like we are, I love like looking for, the cheaper flights or looking for good deals as well. So that comes into it too. And I just, now that I've got older children, they're 15 and 17, I treasure our travel experiences and the memories we have of our travel experiences more than ever. I think there's nothing like a trip in terms of that, that really deep connection that you can get with each other and that shared experience. As I said, there's definitely cons that come with traveling with families. And it's interesting because I think, as the kids have gotten older, when the kids were littler, I would always be like, oh, it's going to be so much easier when they're older. And there is certainly some truth in that, but other challenges come up, just like in parenting in general. I was having a chat to a mum of a younger family in one of the resorts that we were at. She had two very busy boys, and they were sitting next to us at breakfast one day, and she was apologizing, for ruining our peaceful breakfast. And I'm like, no, it's absolutely fine. We were there once. And every time I saw her around the resort, she was just like looking quite tired. I, on the other hand, was like, come on to my kids, let's go for another snorkel. So she had these boys that wouldn't stop, and I was challenged with like, let's make the most of the time that we are here. And that was a lesson for me, like, let go of what I'm expecting from this experience for my kids and let them lay around and not do much if that's what they feel like doing. We don't have to go for 4-hour-long snorkels every day just because we've got limited time. And that's what I would like to do with my time. So that was, definitely a challenge that took me a few days to get into. My kids would be like, we've been snorkeling already here. I'm like, yeah, but we're leaving in a few days and it's so beautiful out there. Let's go for another snorkel. So I think that a big challenge with my teens anyway, they were both quite tired. They needed this break. My son, who's started an apprenticeship, he's working long hours. He's doing early mornings. So I was a little worried he might get bored on this trip because he is kind of a more active kid, but he was quite happy, laying around in these really lovely, beachfront bures that we were staying in, rather than being more active. Of course, we got some active time in as well. But yeah, the difference between traveling with smaller kids and then older kids, obviously there's pros and cons to both. The fact that as kids get older, they're more independent. You can leave them and go and do your own thing. So if they don't want to do something, we still can, me and my husband. And, like a few times we'd go for a snorkel and they wanted to turn back, but me and my husband wanted to keep going. So we could do that because, they're confident swimmers, they're older. I mean, my son's nearly 18. So there was a lot of pros in that independence. The more mature level of conversations you can have at the dinner table and that sort of thing are always nice as well. But on the downside, they have their own ideas of what they want to spend their time doing. And they're harder to talk into. With littler kids, it's like, this is what we're doing. Yes, there might be some pushback, some tantrums, but there's this expectation that you're all doing it together. Whereas as they get older, because they can have that independence, they're like, no, we'll just stay here. So that was definitely, a challenge for me. It's really hard to force them to do things they don't want to do. So yeah, that was that. I guess what I really want to get across here is if you've got younger children, really, I know it can be tricky with travel, but I guess just appreciate the stage they're in as much as you can if you've got younger kids. And I think there's this really narrow window of time where it's really golden years for traveling with kids. I know when we did our big lap around Australia, my daughter was 5, almost 6 when we set off, and my son was 8. And it would have been good if she was a bit older. Like, we definitely pushed her maybe a bit too much with, longer hikes. And of course we would, carry her if she needed or have lots of breaks. But there were certain things that she couldn't do or didn't want to do because she was a little too young. But if we'd waited for that perfect age, I think, if they were 8 and 10, that probably would have been a bit better, but that might not have been able to work for us. So I think there's lots of families that are waiting for this perfect age for their kids to go traveling with, but then those years can pass so quickly. If I was to sort of look back and think what those golden years are, it would probably be from sort of 8 until maybe 13, 14, and then they head into those teen years where in different ways it can get tricky, which is where I am at the moment. So those golden years can pass really quickly. So I think if you're waiting for that perfect time to go traveling with your kids, whether it's a longer adventure or a shorter adventure, just make sure you don't miss those years and, plan and save for those years and book things in, as opposed to being like, oh, now it's too late and they've got part-time jobs or school's too serious now for them to miss any sort of length of time. So Fiji, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this was our first time to Fiji. I've done, quite a bit of travel. I haven't done a huge amount in Asia, but we have travelled, fairly extensively around the world. Still so much to see, of course, but never been to Fiji. And it's so close, and I absolutely loved Fiji. I definitely want more time in Fiji. So I wanted to share a bit about the lessons, some specific to Fiji, some not, from my time there. I love this concept of Fiji time. The local people would remind us we're on Fijian time. There's no rush. I went to yoga one morning and, rushed to get there in time. And, she started probably 10 minutes late. In some ways it can be a little bit frustrating, but if you really immerse yourself in that, and what I've brought home is slowing down, really trying not to rush. They just do things in their own time. That slowness, and of course we are so bad at that here in the Western world. It's go, 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 rush, 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 do. And I love that Fijian people, from what I saw, were just, that they take things slow and they live in the moment so much better than we do. So that was a lesson that I brought back. I think the lesson for me there was that there's enough time for what matters most. Maybe not enough time for everything, but enough time for what matters most. So that I am trying to, bring forward in my everyday life. The other thing that really came up a few times, this one particular time I heard an American tourist ask one of the staff at the resort, "Do you want to go to America one day? And what would you like to do when you get there?" My accents are very terrible. And the Fijian local man, so he was a staff at the resort, he was working at the resort, but most of the staff at the resort came from the local village, lived at the local village, very sort of simple, basic lives. And my guess is, that the vast majority of them are never going to, it's not even in their thoughts that they would travel overseas. He looked perplexed by the question, and he simply asked, "No, I will never go to America." And it was like this, there was no, "I wish I could," or "I'd love to one day," or no sort of negativity in that comment in terms of feeling like he was missing out because he couldn't go. I also, the yoga teacher at the resort, I was chatting to her after a class one day, and again, she lived locally at the village, and I said, "Do you ever visit the other islands nearby?" And she said, "No, we just stay here." And it was just this feeling of like, be content with where you are and what you have. They seem to be very good at that, the Fijian people. As Westerners, we have all these dreams to travel. And I mean, this is probably sounding a little bit like, because I'm talking about how much I love travel. But I do want to continue to travel, but I really loved this feeling of like, just be here now, be content with where you are, what you have. And so I think in our everyday life, that is such a helpful sort of lesson to be reminded of and to think about. We don't always have to be moving on to the next thing, the next travel adventure, the next goal that we're sort of striving towards. I think that can lead to a lot of discontentment, and there's a lot of contentment that can come from just being here and now. The other thing I really kind of got from the Fijian people was laugh more. They're always laughing. They just are very optimistic, happy people that laugh a lot. And I loved that. It just feels good to be around that sort of energy. Another thing that sort of came more from our experience in Fiji, for me, a lesson is, like I sort of alluded to before, my teenagers were very content hanging out, soaking up the sun, laying on the hammock, laying on the daybed, right on the beach. I mean, it was just beautiful location where we were. And, I was initially like, let's go do this, let's go do that, let's go to snorkeling again. And I was wanting to fit it all in and do more with our time there. And, when I learned to relax into that, I can go for another snorkel, but I don't have to get in this kind of friction about whether they're coming or not. And when I could relax into letting them have their own experience, but also taking on a bit of that energy of like, we don't have to do more. We're here to relax. That led to some really nice moments of connection with my kids. There was one day when my daughter was feeling unwell, so she was having a sleep during the day. I can't remember what my husband was doing, but my son and I were just laying on this swinging daybed, like staring out at the ocean. And we were just laying there for a good, I would say, a couple of hours. We were talking about the yachts out on the ocean and thinking about, the people that own those yachts and what they're doing, but having all of these really like just general conversations, life conversations. And it was so lovely. And if I was like, rushing off to go and do another activity, that would have been missed. And I think as the kids have gotten older and now that they're teenagers, everyone's busy and there's less time all together, and certainly less one-on-one time, particularly with my son. I get a lot of one-on-one time with my daughter, but with my son, it's limited now. And so that time was just super precious. We were both relaxed and it was just this, lovely moment of connection. So again, coming back to, not striving to fit more and more in, but just being, slowing down and enjoying those little simple moments of connection with my kids. And bringing that back into my everyday life is something that I'm focusing on as well. And the last thing I want to talk about is fitness. So the first resort that we got to, it was called Barefoot Manta. It was like a more basic rustic resort, beautiful, such a gorgeous location. Anyway, there was a couple there that got there at the same time. I reckon they would have been in their 70s, like later 70s, I'm guessing. And I chatted to the man as we were checking in, and they were from California, San Francisco, I think it was. And he was so excited to be there. And him and his wife, we bumped into them around the resort a few times, and they were fit and healthy. They were doing activities all the time. They were going snorkeling a lot. They were just always moving, and I saw them, go out on the boat on different activities. So they were really active and enjoying their time there. In contrast, there was a couple at the resort that were probably the same age and were not as fit and healthy. They had limited mobility. I mean, hats off to them for coming out to the islands of Fiji and being, traveling anyway, but you could see they couldn't do a lot in terms of activities. I didn't actually see them in the water. I don't know if they went in, but I would see them at meal times only, not sort of out and about doing activities. And it was just this, I guess I had my birthday in Fiji, turned 47. So I'm now officially in my late 40s, which is a little crazy. But I guess it's just given me this new inspiration to stay fit, to stay mobile, to focus on balance and stability and core strength and strength overall, because adventures and travel in your 70s and 80s are possible. You never know what's going to happen with your health. And of course, there can be things that come up that have nothing to do with, how fit and mobile you stay. But I think it's such a big part of it. And just seeing this fit, mobile couple really inspired me. So as I've been getting back into my workouts, as I've been back, I've been thinking about that. I want to be able to have these travel adventures into my older years and keeping fit and healthy, and that strength and stability and balance and all of that stuff that's so important to keep up. Because, I've lost quite a bit of confidence in my body since dislocating my knee snowboarding a few years ago. I'm fine, but with those more sort of risky activities, or I can be I can feel that I've lost some confidence. So I really want to, get that confidence back. I'm still always willing to give things a go, but that can change pretty quickly as you get older. You can lose a lot of that confidence, and staying fit and, balance is a huge one. Even when we were going out snorkeling, you had to kind of balance over the rocks and to get out. And I think, even me now compared to how I potentially was 10 years ago, that declines as you get older, right? So having a real focus on that moving forward is a big lesson that I got from our adventure to Fiji as well. So again, this is why I love travel, because it gives you this broader perspective, these life lessons, this personal growth that you wouldn't have otherwise. So I hope there's been something in that for you. It's been a bit of a rambling, a bit of a download for me. So thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing me to share and listening in. And we are going to be back next week with our regular programming, back to kids' health. Next week, we're going to be talking about ADHD and medications, and, you know, the benefits of medications, the downsides of medications, and what we can do naturopathically to support kids with ADHD, whether they're on medications or not. So tune in next week for that. Thanks for listening. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.